I'm going to move this over a little. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for hanging in there. Last session of the afternoon before drinks, so we'll try to keep it as lively as possible. My name is Redfearn. I am the founder of Panorama Financial Markets Advisory. I am an advisor to Securitize. I've helped them with a number of the things that they've done. I guess one of the reasons why is I spent 3.5 years at the SEC running the division of trading and markets when Jay Clayton was there. And, so there's a lot of things to work out there. And I'm very pleased today to be able to introduce Richard Gabbert. Richard is, all of the conversations that we've had so far about policy and regulation, keep in mind that any of the issues that pertain to securities go to the SEC. So we've talked about the Hill, we've talked about legislation. The reality is, if it's in the securities framework, there's a lot of things that can happen at the SEC today, and that's partially what we really want to dive through. So when we think about policy under Trump 2.0, a lot of that is getting focused at the SEC's crypto task force, and Richard is the chief of staff of the SEC's crypto task force. Just a couple words about Richard. He worked before that, before moving there when, in like a month ago or two or something?
2 months ago almost.
2 months ago. Before that, he worked for Commissioner Hester Peirce, crypto mom. We all love Hester because of all the things that she's done for the industry, but he worked for 7 years, was it?
7 years, yeah.
7 years, and before that, he actually worked in the Division of Trading and Markets when I was running the Division of Trading and Markets. I think we worked together for about 2 or 3 months or something before she recognized his talents and he pulled her up. So anyway, we're very excited to talk about a lot of these things, about what is the SEC doing, what is this crypto task force, we got roundtables, a lot of how the SEC engages with the Hill and, and the Crypto Council and so on. Right. So let's dive in. Richard, I think you have a little disclaimer.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
Right?
Yeah, I do have a disclaimer. The opinions I express today are my own and not those of the commission, my fellow commissioners, nor my colleagues. So having said that, fire away.
I used to have to do that all the time and would try to end with, and if you don't like them, they're not mine either. Anyway, so let's talk about the crypto task force, Richard. So we've all seen this. We know that Commissioner Peirce has put out, now kind of like a request for information. I love it. She cites Bob Dylan. Some people would say Jimi Hendrix, but Bob Dylan. There must be some way out of here. Throws out 40-something questions where she's waiting for all of you, by the way, to answer those questions, write them up, and send them back in. But it's great. So tell us about the crypto task force. Like, what is the objective, and how is this going to work?
So yeah, under Acting Chairman Ueda, the commission is kind of stepping back, right, from its enforcement first approach that has characterized the commission for the last several years in its approach to crypto. And one of the flaws of that approach is that it really emphasized a retroactive and a reactive approach to crypto regulation. And the goal instead of the crypto task force is to help set the commission on a better path, right? More clarity, more certainty for market participants, more communication with market participants as well. And so the task force draws largely from staff within the commission, across the commission, from several different divisions and offices, folks who have deep expertise in our markets, in the statutory framework that we operate under, and in our rule book. We've also brought a couple of people from the outside, Landon Zinda from Coin Center, and Mike Seelig, who was most recently at Wilkie Farr. And so what the task force is trying to do is coordinate across the commission. You know from your time there that the various divisions and offices can get rather siloed. And our hope is to kind of overcome that siloing effect and actually promote cross-pollination, right? There are a lot of issues that span divisions or offices. We want to make sure that people inside the building are talking to each other and that we're able to generate ideas that actually represent solutions for folks in the industry. And another thing that we hope to be able to do is to set an example for how the commission can engage with the public. We've heard repeatedly over the last 4 years that the commission staff had stopped talking to people. And we want to try to make a change in that culture. There are a lot of folks at the commission who have a lot to offer, who are good lawyers and good analysts who can think carefully about solutions to problems, and we want to empower them to engage with folks in the industry.
I remember there was a period of time when people would want to go down there and they thought that if they went in and met that they might get followed up with a Wells notice, and so they sort of stopped going there.
Right.
But one question I have is this, so this, quite frankly, the speech on there must be some kind of way out of here. 48 questions, I think it was.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful questions, organized. Like, how did you come up with those questions, and to what extent does that kind of reflect the real policy the priorities that you're thinking about?
Yeah, the range of the questions really does, I think, reflect the breadth and depth of expertise that we have at the commission. And, frankly, expertise that was largely left to languish when it came to addressing the needs of this market over the past several years. We worked closely with the staff in the divisions. We had brainstorming sessions with members of the task force, a lot of conversations with Commissioner Peirce, and tried to identify kind of the key issues that probably need to be tackled early on, right, to provide some clarity for the industry. The goal was, there are 48 questions, and that's not counting the sub-questions, right, that some of the questions had. The goal was not to overwhelm the industry. It really was to try to identify specific issues that we've been puzzling over and encourage folks to respond from their own experiences in their own area of expertise. I'm sure there will be some folks out there who want to answer all 48 plus questions, but you shouldn't feel compelled to do so, right? Answer those where you think you can add value. I checked this morning, I think we've gotten 22 written responses so far, some of them very, very detailed. We've got one 30-some page submission that addresses only questions 1 through 6 of the RFIs. So I look forward to the multi-volume set that we'll eventually have on hand.
So for this crowd, I'm sure there's a lot of people who would like to influence the policy formation process in some way. If folks out here are thinking, I really want to get down there and get in front of that task force and and share my views, what is the best process for them to go through to potentially get involved?
Right. So if you go to the Commission's website, there's a link on the front page that says Crypto Task Force. And if you click on that link, at the top of the next page, there are 2 buttons, one for written input and one for a meeting request. And if you would like to come in, click on the meeting request form, fill it out. We do ask for an agenda and materials if you have them to accompany your request. Any materials for which you've not requested confidential treatment will be posted to our website along with the agenda. And that is just to ensure that we are being as transparent as possible and to provoke dialogue, not only between industry and the task force, but also in the industry and with other interested parties in the public about the conversations that they're having with the task force. With written input, the procedure is very similar. Materials that you submit will be posted to a different section of the website, and we are reviewing those, and they will also contribute to public discourse. In addition, I think we'll be getting to roundtables shortly. If you have ideas about possible roundtables or suggestions for people to participate on those roundtables, you can also send those suggestions to crypto@sec.gov.
So the roundtable idea is great. So many of you have seen this. They've now posted there'll be a series of roundtables at the SEC. The first one is scheduled for March 21st, which is on defining security status.
Right.
I know that when I was there, we held roundtables, and they were great because when you get one-on-one meetings, you hear like one side, but when you get everybody in on a panel discussion.
Right.
They really kind of argue it out, and you get a lot of great stuff on the record. So is it the same kind of idea? Like, what is the objective of the roundtable, and what do you expect to come out of that?
No, it really is to foment public discussion on difficult issues. We're bringing in, I think, for the first roundtable, and I expect the pattern will follow for subsequent roundtables, 12 people from a wide, diverse range of backgrounds, including a few folks who are skeptics of the industry. And it really is to get people talking about the issues in depth in a way that will inform the task forces and then eventually the staffs and the commission's thinking about each of these issues.
And these will all be webcasts. So
They'll be
people
yes.
can stream it and watch
That's right.
everything that's going on. They
Yes.
don't all have to go to Washington.
No, you don't
DC
have to come to Washington, although we'll have cherry blossoms in the very near
Okay,
future.
that's
So it's
a lovely
worth a
time
visit.
to visit.
Yes.
The lovely time to visit the
Yes.
city. And so we don't know what the next topic is going to be. Are they going to be like monthly or like?
I hope that they'll happen in pretty rapid succession throughout the spring. I expect more details to be forthcoming, maybe as early as this week.
Fantastic. So another thing that we've all, of course, been paying attention to is the White House Crypto Council. And we've seen this established at the administration level. We know that, it was March 7th. There was the White House Digital Asset Summit, with David Sachs and the president and like a very impressive group of industry CEOs all gathered around. But the question I have is, so at the SEC, you're doing your thing, and the White House has the Crypto Council.
Right.
How are you, and I know Commissioner Peirce was there,
right?
But how are you kind of working out what the SEC is doing relative to the White House and their efforts?
Right. Well, the president, made a promise during the campaign, right, to the American people that the U.S. would be kind of the crypto capital of the world. And so it's clear that if that is to be the case, the commission has a significant role to play. Market participants, as I said earlier, right, they want clarity and certainty. We had a lot of confusion over the past several years. And, this has helped to create a dysfunctional marketplace. We are certainly, going to be paying close attention to what the White House is doing here. I think the White House, right, is coordinating kind of a government-wide effort, because this technology is not just about finance. It's not just about assets, right? It has broader societal and governmental implications. So we'll be, working to, provide relief where we can expeditiously, and to, take the initiative on issues relating to securities and hopefully providing guidance as to what is not securities. And as we do that, we'll coordinate with the White House and make sure that we're working to achieve what the administration has set as the goal, which is to reshore folks who'd moved offshore over the past 4 years, and to facilitate the creation of a regulatory environment that is hospitable to innovation.
So one thing that is different that I can note from when I was there is this executive order now that has come out, where basically policies or actions of the commission have to be run by the White House or run by OMB before they go forward. That's a little bit different. So that's kind of the executive branch having a little bit more input over the policy. How do you look at that? Is it that anything that you decide to do that's meaningful has to go back to OMB to run it up the flagpole? Or
yeah, I think we're still working through this. My understanding is that actions that are voted on by the commission likely will need to go before OMB. Although don't quote me on that, I don't know that for sure. But I think that, we already do send all commission actions to OMB for review of the Paperwork Reduction Act portion of the rulemaking. So the process is not entirely foreign to us. What this does, I think, is subjects our economic analysis to a second tier of oversight. And, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Hopefully it will make our work more rigorous, more data-driven. And I do think that given that bringing clarity to this marketplace is one of the goals of the administration, I don't expect it to interfere with our ability to take action in this space.
Interesting, interesting. So Congress, so we're in a great time, right? We have Chair Scott of Senate Banking Committee. We have French Hill from the House Financial Services Committee. All of these, there's prioritization on stablecoins, a market structure bill, legislation generally. It's pretty exciting. But now, so there's this issue of what is Congress doing and what is the SEC doing? I think that in areas where there's sort of clear statutory authority related to securities, it's sort of game on, you guys can run with the ball.
Right.
When it's gray area things, there's going to be other areas who need statutory authority. I think during the Gensler area, there was not a lot of constructive dialogue between the commission and Congress. It's called technical advice. Like they give you bills, you read them, you try to give them feedback. How do you see that having changed, and do you feel like there's going to be great engagement between commission staff and Congress in terms of some of the legislation that will be pertinent to these policies?
Right, yeah. No, I mean, Congress, right, has the authority to establish the statutory framework under which agencies like mine operate. And so I think it is incumbent on us to provide technical assistance where we can. And under Acting Chairman Ueda, that is the stance, I believe, that the agency is going to take, to engage with Congress on these issues. And this is a helpful avenue for dialogue as well between the Hill and between the agencies, right? Some of the details of our regulatory framework are not always obvious to folks outside the building. And so the technical assistance process allows us to provide insight on the interaction between proposed legislation and the existing statutory framework or our rule book as well. And yes, we do have authority to regulate securities. Commissioner Peirce has expressed her view for many years now that the prior chair of the SEC had adopted an overexpansive view of what was a security, right? I think he many times said that basically the entire tokens throughout the digital asset space are overwhelmingly or almost entirely securities, and Commissioner Peirce has taken a different view. And so there may be areas where the commission provides clarity, as it did recently on the meme coin, with the meme coin statement. Actually, that wasn't the commission, that was the Corp Fin staff, but provide clarity that certain things are not securities. But certainly what remains in our remit, we do have the authority to regulate.
And that's actually fantastic. So another question that is of great interest is the SEC dynamic with the CFTC, right? So we have an interesting history where you have jurisdictional questions about what goes within the mandate of the CFTC, what are commodities, what goes in the mandate of the SEC. Certainly Congress is going to have to speak to some of these, but in the meantime, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that you're working out between the SEC and the CFTC. I think one of the things, so Richard and I actually worked when he was in Commissioner Peirce's office on Title VII implementation, right? So you have security-based swaps, and we had a memorandum of understanding. We would sit down with the CFTC. We'd try to figure out things because they really affected both sides. That was an example of a success. There were other examples where we didn't necessarily see eye to eye, and there was quite a bit of friction. So how are you seeing that sort of dynamic? I think under Chair Gensler's thing, there wasn't a lot of good conversations happening back and forth. How are you seeing that changing and working moving forward?
Well, President Trump's nominee for chairman of the CFTC is Brian Quintenz, and he was Commissioner Peirce's counterpart when we were working on the Title VII issues back so long ago, right? And I think we had a pretty good working relationship, wouldn't you say?
I think it was great. So I will tell you this, when I got there and I could not believe they had this meeting, Chris Giancarlo was the chair at the time, and he and Jay Clayton had this whole big thing, and we got all the SEC staff together with the CFTC staff, and we were like, this is great. I was actually surprised. I didn't think this was going to happen when I got there. And they ended up taking a picture of the whole group. They put it on Twitter, and all of the commissioners that weren't invited complained.
Right.
Because it was like a couple of commissioners, so
Yeah,
so
no,
they're like, I don't know if we can do that again, right? But that was
That's right,
he was a very it was that really helped a lot, that relation. So this is great that he's
right. So I think that'll be really beneficial in terms of our two agencies working together. Now, I'm not an expert on the CFTC's jurisdiction. I do think there's a question of what authority they currently have. I think, the FIT 21 bill, maybe some of the other legislation that's being considered by Congress would give the CFTC expressly authority over spot market in digital assets that are not securities. We'll have to, see what that legislation looks like if it's enacted. I would say, my one big hope is that if we do go that route, that it is easy to distinguish between what is a security and what is not. Because I think, another of the examples we lived through during your tenure was the unfortunate, what was it, the spikes?
the spikes.
Product.
I have to tell this anecdote very quickly.
Yes,
So
please.
there was a product called the Spikes, and the question was, is it a security future or is it a future?
Right.
And the CFTC had told, this was the Miami Stock Exchange, that it was definitely a future and not a security future. And my stab at the answer, it's definitely a security future, no doubt. The starting meeting was, we are 100% sure it's a security future. Nope, we are 100% sure it's a future. That's where we started. And after 2 years of back and forth, we never got on the same page on that.
Right.
So.
Right, and I think
it is not always aligning the way you would like it to.
Right, and this industry innovates even more rapidly, right, than the traditional financial markets. And so I think if we get stuck in that loop, that's probably not productive. So hopefully we find some way to make that division a little clearer.
Hopefully Congress can help, right? Yes. But it is true, as to Richard's earlier point, right? The CFTC does not oversee spot markets, nor does it oversee retail investors. It is professional markets. It's not spot products. It's futures, commodities, and so on. So they really do need legislation to do that. They really don't necessarily have the full bench to regulate that. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that. Be nice if they could merge them, but we all know that, that merger thing, the Agriculture Committee and others, they don't really love that idea so much.
Yeah, well, I won't speak to that.
Yeah, but good idea.
I will say, right, we do have plenty of experience in the dual regulation of entities in the traditional market space, right? So there are broker-dealers that are also futures commission merchants. There are swap execution facilities that are also security-based swap execution facilities. And so, I think it is possible to find a workable way forward there. And that may, to the extent that we have dually registered trading platforms or broker-dealer type entities, that may take some of the pressure off of distinguishing between what is a security and what is not a security. But that will require a great deal of coordination during the rulemaking process once this legislation is
I did love the comment made earlier about it would be nice if everything could just be on one screen, right? But you think about like two regulators and two different, like one screen would be fantastic. But we'll see. We'll see how
Congress decides.
So I want to talk about enforcement. I think everybody's pretty pleased that a number of these cases were effectively dropped. I don't know what the right terminology. I heard earlier dismissed. I'm not sure they were dismissed, but they were effectively dropped. The commission came back and they said, we're not sure if we even agree with the last brief that we submitted to the court. So we're gonna back away from a lot of these, which is helpful. I would ask the question this way. So I love reading Matt Levine from Bloomberg, and he wrote recently, in the Trump administration, the legal status of crypto is still uncertain, but the enforcement status is go ahead, do whatever. So now I have to believe that in the commission, it's probably not go ahead and do whatever.
Well, I was going to say it's a good thing that Matt Levine in many of his columns says that he is not providing legal advice.
That is, he typically does say that.
Yes, he does.
In fact,
so don't take that as legal advice. Not legal. What I would say.
So how should we, right? So I think Commissioner Peirce and maybe Ueda as well have come out and said we're really going to be focusing on fraud and manipulation But I think that there's some question about, some folks might think, hey, it's game on. Like how should we be thinking about the enforcement posture in light of the changes to the enforcement,
Yeah,
vibe altogether?
So I certainly can't speak about any specific enforcement matter, and you haven't asked me, but just to put that out there. And I probably shouldn't say too much about the enforcement program more generally, but I will say, right, you're correct. Commissioner Peirce has said that, we are going to continue to our unabated pursuit of fraud in securities transactions. So to the extent that there are tokens out there that are securities and there's fraud in them, you can expect the commission to continue going after the folks engaged in that activity. And in the Coinbase dismissal and the press release that the commission issued on that, right, it said that this decision was made to allow the commission to exercise. Let me actually read from it here. So this decision to exercise its discretion and dismiss this pending enforcement action rests on its judgment that the dismissal will facilitate the Commission's ongoing efforts to reform and renew its regulatory approach to the crypto industry. So I think that's a useful summary of where the Commission is at this point.
Very helpful. So timing. So, I will say this, that, there's this sort of, in the last panels, we've heard some interesting discussions, and some of it has included, well, we think there should be regulation, but not everything should be regulated. And then there's sort of like, we want clarity, but sometimes clarity, it's good. I don't think everybody's necessarily going to love everything they get when they actually put rules together that then you have to abide by. And so ultimately, it is a process. You've got the task force, you've got the roundtables, you've got a ton of comments coming in, you potentially have rulemaking, you got to check in with the White House. So when we think about the timing of this, right? And by the way, not to mention the fact that I think everybody knows, like, there's a massive downsizing going on right now. I don't know, maybe that's an overstatement, but a lot of people are leaving. They're taking the Doge retirement package of 50 grand if I leave, I don't know when it was. But right. A lot of people are leaving, and the responsibilities of the commission are increasing substantially, right? And by the way, equities, options, fixing, all the other things that they regulate are not going away. So in that environment, how do we think about how long is it going to take to kind of crunch through this process and really turn out some of the policy that kind of provides that clarity and unlocks the opportunities here?
No, I mean, you're right. There are a lot of talented staff at the agency who are, probably going to take one of these offers and leave, they will be missed. Fortunately, we have a deep bench at the agency with, I think, a lot of other talented staff who will be ready to step up and do the work that's necessary, right? Whether that's in the form of no action letters or staff guidance or interpretive releases or FAQs, or writing proposed rules for commission consideration. So I'm confident that we'll continue to be able to move ahead with respect to these issues. And we've done quite a bit already. On day 2 or 3 of the new administration, we rescinded, or the staff rescinded, SAB 121, right, which had caused so much grief in the industry. We've got this very detailed set of RFIs out that are already provoking a great deal of discussion and conversation. Staff statement from the Division of Corporation Finance on meme coins. Acting Chairman Ueda last week suggested that he had asked the staff to revisit, right, the proposed rule that, among other things, would have revised the definition of exchange. And then we have these roundtables coming up. So I do think and hope that we'll continue to move at a rapid clip in the coming months.
Listen, I got to say this, the pace that you've been moving has been great. All of the things that you just mentioned have happened fast, and especially compared to the 4 years prior. Really, really, really impressive amount of accomplishment so far. A lot of work being done. I just want to thank you for the work you're doing and thank the commission for this next phase. And we're going to try to end like 20 seconds early, so because we know everybody's getting drinks. So let's thank Richard for joining us.
Thank you, Brett.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.